Just a few years ago in a small village in northern France, a young boy and his sister were given a homework assignment.
Now children, over this Easter break, I want you to talk to someone in your family about their favorite Easter memory.
Now the children just so happened to be visiting with their grandfather over the holiday, and both were very excited to talk to him about the project. Grandfather lived on a small farm just outside of town and was sitting on the porch when the family pulled in.
Tell us, grandfather, about your favorite Easter memory.
The boy said. The old man took a puff from his pipe and said,
"That's easy, my boy. It's why I fly the Canadian flag out front. Sit down and I'll tell you a story."
The old man sat with each of the children at his knee.
I was born in 1912. I was 2 years old when the Germans took control of our small little town of VIMY. So I don't remember any changing. I guess when you are really young, the world is still new. You are caught in the moment and don't know what the past is. I was told my father was a good man. He had a small business in the square where he repaired watches. I was told that when the Germans came, they took control of our village and taxed all the citizens to pay for their war. I was 4 years old when the French started to fight back. I again don't remember much of this, but I do remember the fear that was in the house. I remember nights of eating little more than crumbs of bread and my parents fighting because they were afraid. My mother said we used to go to St. Martin's Church and pray something bad would come to these Germans. But it was the winter between my 4th and 5th year that I had my first memory. It was just after the New Year. I remember this because we had celebrated a very meager Christmas. My father's business was not doing so well, as the only ones who could afford watches were the Germans, and they paid little to nothing when he worked for them. I remember it was a cold night. We had only just sat for dinner when the knock came at the door. My father opened it and was confronted by a German soldier. I remember he screamed at my father and pulled him outside. My mother grabbed me and pulled me close. I heard the gunshot that ended my father's life. That is my first memory. I remember that after that I went every day to St. Martin's and I prayed. I prayed hard for God to make it right. Even when the church was bombed, we went and we prayed in the rubble of that cathedral. Then on Easter, I remember all the adults left in our village gathered at that old church and said a prayer. It was a prayer that God heard. The next day he brought us Canadians. 100,000 of them, the entire Canadian army showed up. From my bedroom window, I could see the German trenches. Like a farmer dropping seeds in his field, the Canadian bombs start falling, and before the dust settles up, pops a bunch of Canadians running headlong at the Germans. They called it a rolling barrage. For the next 3 days, they drop bombs and rush forward into the confused German troops. They go forward and attack and fall back and then attack again. The Germans are pulverized, and then through the streets of my village marches the 4 regiments of the Canadian Army. At the head of them is this guy on a horse. He comes up and says he is Field Marshal Byng. I remember I was 5 and I thought with his English accent, he said Bungo. I ran up to him and he picked me up and we rode through town. And I'm yelling to everyone I know, "Come meet our hero Bungo." And we stood there chanting Bungo, Bungo, Bungo. And from that day on, that regiment was called Bungo Byng and the Byng Boys. And that, my child, is my favorite Easter memory.